For this next part, we're gonna focus on making some traps and a health system working. So let us try that. So I'm actually gonna first of all delete this player start, and I'm gonna replace it by just dragging the BP third person character in. So you can go to your control space, your content drawer, and go to your content third person blueprints, or just find where your character is and just drag them into the world. And that should be fine. So if we press Alt P, oh, never mind. Another step I missed was, so you click your BP third person character, and we want to possess this character. Would it be auto receive input player 0? Let's try that. No, that didn't work. Let's disable that. It should be something called possess. But let's just type it in, maybe that'll work. Yeah, let's just type it in, that's a lot easier. Auto possess player, let's be sure to make it player 0. So player 0 is you. It usually starts the numbers from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's try that, Alt B. And yep, we should be possessing that character now, which is great. It just helps for me to visualize things more if I can see the actual player instead of the player start. Okay, now let's create some actors, a trap. So I want you to go into any of your folder, right click, and then create a blueprint class. And let's create an actor. Let's name this Spikes. So we can open this. And if in your viewport it actually contains nothing so far, one thing we can do is to add a cone. So let's look for a cone here, basic shape, click that. Maybe I don't want it as big, so maybe I'll scale to like 0.1. Yeah, that looks good for a singular spike. So let's go back to our third person map and let's drag it somewhere. Control space to open up the content drawer over here, and let's drag it over there. Actually, I want it quite bigger. It's not quite as big as I want. So let's go back to the spikes and let's set the size to about 0.3. And that should be a lot bigger. The snapping is a bit too harsh for me right now, so let's set the position grid snap value to about 1. I like that a lot better. Okay. About here is good, and let's duplicate this. One thing we can do to duplicate is to go into Word Outliner and then click, there should be a duplicate here. My apologies, this is my first time in Unreal Engine 5. Yeah, over here, edit, Control D, duplicate. That took me a long time. Okay. Yeah, so let me just duplicate this as like spikes. If you're entering this area, you get spiked. Who doesn't want to not get spiked? I was just pressing Control D there to duplicate it, and one thing you can do to select all of them is to hold Control and then left click multiple and then Control D that to duplicate, and then slide that down for 2 rows. Let's do like 2 rows, maybe even 3. Yeah. You can also press G to toggle game view so you see what that's like in game. I'm gonna press G again for edit mode. And that is great. So if you press Alt P right now or play the game, the traps won't be doing anything so far, and it's actually kind of blocking your character from passing. Oh, my game froze for a minute. Okay. So now we got basic trap set in. We next want to do like a damage and to do your player health. So let's first create player health. Open up your content drawer. Let me just select something random so I don't select all the traps. That doesn't really matter, it does as a visual thing. Okay, so it's right click, user interface, and let's create a widget blueprint. And let's pick user widget. We can name this player UI, so it stands for player user interface. It's kind of what the player sees once they're in game. So open that up. Great, so now you have your player UI. The first step would be, if you don't have a canvas panel listed here yet, is to search for a canvas panel in the palette here. Type in canvas. canvas panel, drag it onto there, and you should have like a rectangle border. That's where your UI is. So let's drag a progress bar in there, and we can also type in a text. So drag text. So if you click text here and you type in text, you can modify what that says. So let's just put health over there, type in health, and then we want the progress bar over here. Kind of like that, maybe extend a little bit, maybe I want this to be thinner like that. And then you can shift or control click both of them, or maybe just one of them at a time, and be sure to set your anchor to the bottom left. That's just for scaling purposes. It's good practice, especially if you're exporting to different devices or different screen sizes. Great. So let's click the progress bar here, and for the fill color and opacity, let's set this to like a green for health. For the percent over here, let's set this to 0.5. Be sure to click compile and then save, and go into your blueprint third-person character. So it'll be this one over here. In the content browser, that'll be in content third-person blueprint. So you just double-click that. Let's head into the event graph. So this is where your code is. Let's right-click and type in begin play, event begin play. This means once the player is in game. Let's spawn create widget. And we're going to point this to the player UI that we created. And return value, so you can, this is the execute pin, so this flows from like left to right. This pretty much means, hey, once this is done, proceed to the next step, and then proceed to the next step. Return value, you can just use like your left click mouse to drag, and if you want to cancel it, you can hold Alt and then left click. So that's like Alt on your keyboard next to spacebar and then left click. That's what you do. For return value, left click drag, and let's type in add to viewport. Oh, that got missing there. It's case and context sensitive, add to viewport. You can also click this to expand more details. So let's click compile or F7 to compile it, then save, and let's click play or Alt P. So you should have your health there, but if you notice, it's not hooked up to anything yet. It's not hooked up to any of the code you've done for health. It's not hooked up to the damage you receive from the spike. So that's really the next step that we do. Press escape. So what this piece of code does is it casts it to your player screen, to your viewport. This is the player UI, it's grabbing the UI and casting it to the viewport. Okay. Now we actually want to create a damage function. So in the variables over here, let's click plus and let's type in current health. Be sure to note the case sensitive, the capitals as well. And let's convert this current health to be a float. A float is a number, can be any number. A boolean where it was is like a true or false value. So let's create another variable here called max health. Make sure it's a float as well, and let's click current health, and it's asking us to compile the blueprint, so that's good practice. After you've done any of your variables, press F7 or the compile button here. So now you should be able to modify the value for this current health. Let's set this to a temporary 80, and then your max health will be 100. So when you boot in the game, you'll have 80 out of 100 health. You can do 100, but for demonstration purposes, let's put 80 for now. And we want to right click in your BP third person character in your event graph. Let's type in event damage, event any damage. Left click that. So from here, you want to type in your you want to drag in your current health. So left click and drag and then set. And make sure this execute pin flows to the next one. And from damage, you want to left click drag and then type in minus. Look for a subtract function, and then what you want to do is drag your current health. Left click drag and then click get. And you actually want to inverse this. So by that I mean hold Alt on your keyboard and left click this to disable that. And you want your current health minus any damage you take, and then you plug that into your current health. So it will look something like this, and that should be good enough for now. So hit compile and then save this. So you should have this piece of code. Hop into your spikes or content browser, the spikes you created, and click the cone And what you want to do is you want to look for collision, and you want to set the collision preset to overlap all. So right now it's block all dynamic, so it's actually blocking the player from passing, which is not what we want to do in this case, which I'll show in a demonstration. But let's set this to, overlap all. And if you press Alt P or play, you should be able to walk over these spikes now. Yep, that's great. And what you want to do also is to click spikes here and then search for tag here at the search function. And we want to add a tag to this one called trap. So a tag, like a hashtag, essentially, you're just making the game know that this spike has the tag called trap. You want to do the same thing for your blueprint third person character. So that's like this one here, your actual character. Go to the event graph, click BP third person character self, and then type in tag in the details, and be sure to add a tag to this called player. So lets the game know that it has the tag player. Let's compile this, save, head back into spikes, compile and save. Now we want to head into the event graph for the spikes. This is for the spikes. And then we want to do let's first of all delete all of this. So just left click, drag, push delete. We want to do an event overlap. Event actor begin overlap. And then from the execute pin, drag, and we're going to type in apply damage. From the other actor, we're going to drag out, left click, and type in hashtag. And if the actor hashtag player, it will continue, but you need a return value for here. And for the return value, type in a branch. And we actually want to disable this execute pin, alt and left click, and you want this to feed through to the branch first. Then the condition will be over here, plug that into there. Let me move this over here for neatness. And then after the true value, you go apply damage. So pretty much what this means is if your cone overlaps and the other actor has the tag called player, which we set here, remember your player, oh, my viewport just disappeared. So if you accidentally click that, you can add viewport again. So you just go window and then a viewport. Where is viewport? Yep, over here. Yeah, so now you're back to normal. So back to what I was saying. So if your spikes overlap with anyone that has the actor tag player, it continues. So this is a true or false value. If this is true, continue. But if it's not true, you'll do this code instead. But we only have true for now. So you remember here in the third person character, we gave it the tag called player. Let's hop back into here and let's actually apply some damage, maybe 10. And be sure for this damage actor, it hooks up to this other actor as well. So you have these two blue lines feeding from each other. Let me bring this up here. So if your cones overlap with a player, apply damage, and you apply that damage to the damage actor, which feeds back to here, which means the player. It's 10 damage, so let's play that and let's see how that plays out. So right now it's actually not hooked up to our UI yet, so we missed a part. Okay, so now let's compile and save this. One thing we can do is hop into your viewport, control space, and click save all. So that saves anything you've touched. I highly recommend doing this frequently because control S only saves the stuff that you're previewing on your screen. So if you're in spike, it's only going to save spike, but be sure to click save all frequently. This option is usually available in like any content browser that you're in or the content drawer. So let's hop back into player UI, which was this health thing. Now I want you to click on health over here, and then I want you to click bind, and let's create a binding. We're going to name this function. So right now it's called get%. We want to name this player health, and let's unattach this link. And we're gonna cast to the third person character, so which is you. And then from object, we're gonna get player character or get player pawn, or it doesn't really matter. Be sure to have 0 here. So player 0 is you. It usually starts from 0. If you have like a second player, that's player 1. but for the first player it actually starts from 0, so that's why it's 0. And then we want to get the current health. Type that in, and you also want to get the get max health. So pretty much your player UI, which is this file, is trying to communicate to your third person character, which is this file, and is trying to grab the two variables that you made. So if you recall, we had the current health and max health variables that we created, and from there we want to type in a divide. So operators divide, you want to divide your current health by your max health, and you want to plug this into return value. Be sure to execute planes flow from one to the other. And from there, let's click Alt P. So if you recall, we actually set the player health to start from 80 out of 100. And if you walk over, you should be taking damage. Yep, so there's your damage because you step over the spikes, and finally you die. But we haven't coded the die part yet. So that's great, your health works. So if we were to go back to our third person character and we set current health to, let's get rid of the tag search here. Oh, let's set current health to about 100. And if we click Alt P or play, now it is at 100. So your UI is communicating to your third person character. So that's great. One thing we can then do is to add a branch. So this isn't the third person character. Let's type in what's called a branch again. So it's like a condition check. It's checking if something is true or false based on the condition you set. So let's type in, let's try and grab the current health again. And we want to drag from here and then type in less or equal. So if your current health is less than or equal to 0, this is the condition that we're setting. So you make sure this damage flows to each other. What we then want to do is, I wonder if this has a death montage, like a death animation. Let's see. Is there a death animation here? You can also filter for type. I actually want to filter for animation. Nope, doesn't have any animation. I was trying to look for a death animation to show you what it's like, but third person template does not come with death animation, unfortunately. But we have the next best thing. So let's go into character movement here and left click drag. So you have your get character movement. It will want to set the set walk speed. Sure, it's walk speed. Yeah, set max walk speed. And from character movement, you also want to drag out a set rotation rate. So you should have these two things, and from here, true, plug that into set max walk speed and plug max walk speed into rotation rate. Pretty much what this means is, if your character takes damage, be sure to subtract their health, and if your character's health is 0 or less than 0, you set your character's speed to 0 and your rotation to 0. So it pretty much means your character is still and they cannot move. So let us try that out. Your health is 100. You walk over the spikes, take damage, but if you walk over them too much... Oh, why am I still moving? That's strange. But your speed should be set to 0. Yeah, that's really strange. It's not like an Unreal Engine 5 thing. Maybe that's an Unreal Engine 5 thing. Negative 100. That's really strange. Unreal Engine 4, it usually just like stops your character, but I don't know why he's still moving. Okay then, maybe there's something else that we're missing. A new template, I guess. Let's see. Max walk speed. Yeah, maybe it's the minimum analog walk speed. Let's set that to 0. Yep, so now my character is completely still. And you can just pretend that your character played like a death animation and now you can't move. So there's your simple spikes and your simple health system. So congrats once you've done that. That's quite a feat to do. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Once you finish, be sure to click save all as usual. You don't want to lose your files. Unreal Engine does have a habit of crashing sometimes you don't expect it. Sometimes you don't know the cause, so be sure to save.